Top 1960s motors, the sexiest motors from the Swinging Sixties. The magnificent and mighty motors of the 1950s with their big fenders, outlandish bumpers, and tall imposing grills made way for low-slung sexiness in the seductive and salacious 60s.
Oh, behave. Yeah.
In all seriousness, the 1960s is quite possibly the most revolutionary car design era of the automotive age. But which were the best cars of the 1960s? I'll tell you in this video.
Brown car guy. A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
The 1960s was all about radical revolution, whether it was in fashion, music, entertainment, sexual and political liberation, or technological achievement. I mean, we went to the moon because we felt like it. Skirts went mini, the Beatles got trippy, our heroes were revolutionaries, and TV boldly went where no man had gone before. Nothing seemed impossible. And cars had moved firmly on from the era of grand motorized carriages for the bourgeois elite and dowdy but utilitarian boxes on wheels for the masses. Now people wanted excitement and character from their cars. They wanted them to be desirable and evocative of the personal expression and freedom of movement that the cars actually represented. Designers went duly wild and created some of the sexiest cars ever conceived. So here are the best cars and the honorable mentions from each year of the Swinging 60s.
Brown car guy.
1960. So having said all of that, 1960 was actually a little bit of a dud year as the automotive decade got off to a slow start. But don't worry, it gets better, a lot better. The Chevrolet Corvair might not have been unsafe at any speed as some claim, but being rear-engined and air-cooled, it was rather radical for an American automobile. Talking of rear-engined and air-cooled, Mazda's first car was a cutie. The R360K car is straight out of a Pixar movie, isn't it? And a special mention must go to the Aerobubble Saab 96. But none are worthy winners, so I'll cheat a little bit. The Mini was technically introduced in August 1959, but it's really about as 60s as Twiggy doing the twist. While it was born out of a pursuit of pure functionality, it surprisingly proved not only a motorsports champion and a top-selling people's car, but a fashion icon and a pop culture superstar with appearances in The Italian Job and more recently Mr. Bean and many other shows and movies. 1961, Roger Moore's Volvo P1800, which he chose for his role as Simon Templar in The Saint, was solid, stylish and cool. Then there's a petite but punchy Alpine A110 and the massive third-gen Ford Thunderbird. But the Brits were on a roll. Triumph TR4, MG Midget, and the imposing Jaguar Mark 10. Plus, of course, Jaguar's iconic E-Type, described by Enzo Ferrari no less as the most beautiful car ever made. Overtly suggestive, it was and remains the ultimate expression of hedonistic motoring pleasure. 1962. Across the Atlantic, Chevrolet came up with its own version of wantonness on wheels with the second generation Corvette Stingray, a real Lothario of a car, so vulgar it was wonderful. Back in Europe though, there was no letting up. We got the MG MGB, a spiffing Triumph Spitfire, as well as the lovely Lotus Elan. 1963. Alfa Romeo's 105 115 series coupes evolving into the GTA in 1965, the sensational Iso Grifo, the Lamborghini 350 GT, the magnificent Maserati Quattroporte, the design of which was based on a 5000 GT, especially coach built for the Aga Khan, the sweet Mercedes W113 SL Roadster, and every dictator's dream ride, the Mercedes 600. Plus, I do like the ministerial Rover P6. This year, though, should have belonged to the achingly gorgeous Ferrari 250 GT Lusso. if it wasn't for a certain British bruiser that landed an iconic starring role in the movie Goldfinger. The Aston Martin DB5, thanks in great part to James Bond, is the epitome of suave sophistication and brutal cool. 1964. The Pontiac GTO was a cool muscle car before muscle cars got really cool. The foxy Ferrari 275 meant business. But Enzo got a dose of his own medicine thanks to the apocal Ford GT40. The story of these car makers' bitter battle on the racetrack has of course been made into a movie. But it's another Ford that takes this year, however not before I play my second joker and move the Porsche 911, which technically started production late in 1964, but I'm going to move it to 1965, and that's in order to make way for the Ford Mustang. Ford's hero car encapsulates masculinity and exuberance, style and charisma, desirability, and even accessibility. It's had more movie and, in fact, Instagram appearances than any other car, and it rules even today, remaining the world's best-selling sports car by far. 1965. The long-lived Porsche 911 is for many the ultimate sports car, and yet it started way back in the 1960s, evolving from the humble Beetle into the giant slayer that it became, whether it be on the road or on a rally stage or on a racetrack. It's a true automotive icon, and again second only to the Ford Mustang for pop culture references. If I hadn't cheated with the 911 and made that the car of 1965, the year probably would have gone to the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, officially the best car in the world. Other cool offerings included the Mercedes-Benz W108-109 luxury saloons and the Triumph TR4A. 1966. Now this was a vintage year. Alfa Romeo Spider, seen in the Graduate movie, BMW O2 series that spawned the 2002, Ferrari 365, Fiat 124 Spider, Fiat Dino, Honda S800, Jensen Interceptor, Lotus Europa, Maserati Ghibli, and the extraordinary front-wheel drive Oldsmobile Tornado. That's an incredible lineup to choose from, and yet there is one car that stood above all of them. It combined extreme beauty with sensational performance and is widely regarded as being responsible for the term supercar being actually coined. It is, of course, the voluptuous Lamborghini Miura. 1967. I was so tempted to give 1967 to Japan's E-Type and certainly Toyota's sexiest car ever, the 2000 GT. But then there's the elegant Mazda Cosmo to consider. And in Europe, it would have seen competition from the Di Tommaso Mangusta, the Aston Martin DBS, the TVR Tuscan, and the quirky and technically fascinating Wankel engine NSU Row 80. But the late 60s is when the muscle car era really came into its own and the pony car wars got serious. So let's try very hard to ignore the outlandishly cool Corvette C3, much loved even today, and instead big up the Pontiac Firebird, which in turn owes its existence to the Chevrolet Camaro, created solely to take on the mighty Mustang, the grudge match that never got old and persists till now. 1968. The Ford Mustang Mach 1 was a strong riposte to the Camaro, but the most captivating car to come out of the States was the second generation Dodge Charger, as driven by the baddies in the movie Bullet. Plus there's the BMW E9, the erotic Ferrari Daytona, the charming Jaguar XJ, the swoopy Lamborghini Espada, the Triumph TR5 and TR6 sports cars, and the adorable little Opel GT. But the Dino 206 GT, 246 GT, more commonly known as the Ferrari Dino, has style, accessibility, and an evocative backstory. It's irresistible and unsurprisingly became the best-selling Ferrari to that point in time. 1969. The automotive world started to ease back off the throttle though by the end of the 1960s as domestic oil production couldn't keep up with demand in the USA. Prices started to increase and the international fuel crisis loomed. Nonetheless, we still got the brilliant Dodge Challenger though, and the fearsome Boss 429 Mustang. plus the Porsche 914, a sort of 1960s Boxster. And from Nissan we got their first Skyline GTR, which was also known as the Hakusuka. But the winner of 1969 has to be the European version of the Ford Mustang. It is, of course, the Ford Capri. A star on TV and track, it was a winner from day one and is now a highly collectible and much sought after car. What was the ultimate car of the 1960s? And so, to name the car of the decade, and oh boy, is this a tough one to call. There are 4 cars here that could each justifiably claim that throne. Take the Jaguar E-Type. It absolutely epitomizes the swinging 60s. It's sexy as hell. I mean, it's basically a giant penis on wheels. Guys look at it and think, yep, that represents me for sure. And girls gasp when they see one and confess that, well, size does matter after all. You can't not pull in an E-Type, as they might have said back in the day. Then there's the Mini, the crazy little car that's as happy in Carnaby Street as it is on World Rally stages. It's fun, it's groovy, it's frankly brilliant. But what for many is the ultimate sports car, the Porsche 911, was also born in this decade and endures to this day. And just for its prowess, its glamour, its lasting appeal, it could rightfully take that top spot, and it very nearly does. It's just that, for me, the 911 really came into its own more in the 1970s than the 1960s. However, there is another car that has endured, that has won as many, if not more fans than any of these others, which in a decade of automotive superstars still remains the undisputed king of cool and the undisputed king of pop culture automotive icons. And that is, of course, the Ford Mustang. It's the blue-collar, all-action automotive hero. It's as desirable as ever, and it remains the best-selling global sports car, even in its modern iterations. The Mustang that you really want, I mean really want though, is something like these. I mean mid to late 1960s fastbacks. This, of course, is the Bullitt Mustang from the movie Bullitt, and this is Eleanor from Gone in 60 Seconds. Despite the company of such great contemporaries, the Ford Mustang fastback is the ultimate car of the 1960s, but by a hair's breadth. But tell me, what was your favorite car of the 1960s? Put it in the comments below.
Brown car guy.
Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here or right here on YouTube. Just hit these 3 little dots down here and click on thanks. Make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.